Tonight, as you gently arrive in the still refuge of this present moment, you are being invited into one of the Buddha's most freeing realizations. This is not a journey across space, but a quiet turning inward toward the deepest ease the heart can know. The practice of releasing. As your breath gradually softens and your body settles into a position of natural rest, allow yourself to drift into a space where ancient understanding meets mindful awareness, where each inhale welcomes calm and each exhale loosens what no longer needs to be held. Let the weight of the day dissolve. Allow tomorrow's concerns to rest on their own. In the hours ahead, you will gently explore what the Buddha described as true happiness, the deep peace that arises when nothing is grasped. Welcome to Silent Monk. Your movement toward inner freedom begins here. In your mind's eye, you find yourself approaching a secluded mountain monastery. As the morning mist slowly lifts from the old peaks, a simple wooden gate stands open. It feels welcoming, yet quietly wise, as though it has greeted many seekers who arrived carrying the same longing for release that now brings you here. Your arrival was not planned by logic or reason. Something quieter guided you. A subtle pull born from weariness, from the many things you have been holding for too long. Old wounds, future worries, the constant effort to control what refuses control. The path toward the monastery curves through ancient pine groves. Their branches are heavy with dew, catching the first light of morning like countless tiny jewels. Each droplet will soon disappear into the warming air, offering a silent lesson in impermanence, one you are only beginning to notice. Even the earth beneath your feet speaks of release. Fallen leaves returning to soil. Broken branches clearing space for new life. The endless rhythm of letting go and becoming again. As you pass through the gate, a deep stillness surrounds you. Not silence, but a living peace. Monks move slowly along stone paths polished smooth by centuries of footsteps. Their movements are unhurried, their faces calm with the serenity that comes from releasing attachment to outcomes. The air feels lighter, scented with pine, dew, and a faint trace of incense drifting from the meditation hall, where practitioners have been sitting since before sunrise. The monastery seems to grow from the mountainside itself, rather than being imposed upon it. Each building rests in harmony with the land. Roofs follow the natural slope. Materials age gently with the seasons. Wind and water are guided, not resisted. Even the structures teach the wisdom of letting go, showing how beauty arises when effort works with nature instead of against it. Your guide appears quietly as though shaped from the mist itself. An elderly monk whose eyes reflect decades of practice and understanding. His simple brown robes move with him, worn soft by time, patched with care rather than pride. There is a gentleness in his presence that feels immediately safe, the ease of someone who knows how to hold space without clinging, how to care without grasping. "Welcome," he says softly, his voice warm with contentment rooted in being alive. "You have traveled far in search of what you already hold, yet cannot receive because your hands are full." His words arrive without force, carrying the quiet authority of truth offered freely, without attachment to being accepted or understood. He gestures toward a small pavilion overlooking the valley. Wooden benches wait there, placed to honor the morning view. "Come, let us sit." The teaching of release begins not with effort, but with presence. As you walk beside him along the stone path, each step feels settling, as though movement itself is creating space within you. The pavilion opens to a wide view below. terraced fields following the land's natural curves, a river winding like silver thread, villages resting within folds of forest and earth. Everything appears just where it belongs. Nothing forced, nothing out of place. From here, you see how harmony emerges when life cooperates with conditions rather than resisting them. As you settle onto the worn cushions, facing the open valley, your shoulders soften. Your breath deepens without instruction. Perhaps this is already release, allowing the body to return to its natural ease when it no longer needs to hold itself tightly. The cushions carry the imprint of countless practitioners who have sat here before, each seeking freedom from unnecessary weight. "Tell me," the monk asks gently, his voice like wind through pine needles, "what feels heaviest in your heart? What are you holding that no longer supports your peace?" The question opens space rather than demanding answers. You sense the layers you have gathered over time. Regrets from choices made and not made. Fears about futures that may never arrive. Relationships that ended with pain you continue to tend. Missed opportunities and the stories you built around them. Simply noticing these burdens reveals how much energy they require, like carrying a pack so long you forget what lightness feels like. The monk listens with quiet compassion as you share what feels safe. His eyes hold your experience without needing to fix it. "The human heart is strong," he says softly. "Strong enough to carry much. But wisdom is knowing what can be set down." A breeze moves through the pines above, sounding like a slow exhale. Even the trees demonstrate the rhythm of holding and releasing that sustains life. In our tradition, he continues, attachment is said to be the root of suffering. Yet attachment is often misunderstood. It is not love or care. It is the tight grasping that insists, "This must be mine, this must remain, this must go my way." He lifts a fallen leaf beside him, studying it with gentle curiosity. The morning light reveals its fine veins, its shifting colors, nature's quiet lesson in change. "See how beautiful this leaf is," he says. "Soon it will return to the soil and nourish new life. If I demanded it stay as it is, clung to it, refused its change, what would happen to my peace?" He holds the leaf lightly in his open palm, appreciating it fully, without resistance. Then, as naturally as breath, he allows it to drift away on the breeze, watching without sadness or grasping. This simple act carries a deep teaching: to appreciate without possessing, to love without suffocating, to care without controlling. This is the beginning of letting go. We can love deeply without ownership. We can value without freezing life in one form. His words rest gently in the morning air. The sun rises higher, warming your skin as dew disappears from grass and leaves, again revealing the flow of change. Even comfort passes. Even this moment will never return in the same way. Yet there is peace in seeing this clearly. Much suffering, the monk observes, comes not from change, but from resisting it. We tire ourselves trying to make the temporary permanent, trying to control what unfolds best on its own. A small bird lands nearby, watches briefly, then flies away. It arrives without clinging and leaves without apology. Animals, the monk says, understand release naturally. They move with conditions, trusting the rhythm that has sustained life for ages. We humans, with our restless minds, have forgotten this quiet wisdom. And as his words fade into the soft mountain air, you feel something loosening within you, preparing you gently for rest. You notice how familiar this teaching feels as you reflect on your own habits of holding. The way your mind returns again and again to moments already past, replaying conversations as if revision could alter what has already settled into memory. The way future scenes are rehearsed repeatedly, as though worry itself might secure a better ending. The way pleasant moments are grasped and stretched through comparison and longing, instead of being allowed to complete themselves naturally. You sense how much quiet energy is spent in these efforts, how tiring it is to try to command what cannot truly be controlled. "Shall we walk together?" the monk suggests gently, rising with an ease that comes from a body no longer at war with itself. Sometimes movement allows understanding to sink deeper than stillness alone. The body remembers how to release long before the mind agrees. You stand and follow him along a winding path that moves through carefully tended gardens. Here, the teaching continues without words. These are not rigid gardens shaped by strict lines and symmetry. They breathe somewhere between intention and wildness. Plants grow in patterns that feel both guided and free, quietly demonstrating another face of letting go. How to guide without forcing. How to shape without harm. How to create beauty through cooperation rather than domination. Vegetables grow beside flowers in arrangements that appear spontaneous, yet somehow feel perfectly balanced. Healing herbs mingle with blossoms grown only for joy. Pathways curve gently, following the land's invitation instead of cutting against it. These gardens, your guide explains softly, were shaped by those who understood the middle way. Not abandoning care, which would invite disorder, and not imposing harsh control, which would require constant struggle. Instead, they learned to release rigid authority while keeping wise intention. You pass raised beds that follow the slope of the earth, gathering rainwater naturally. Fruit trees are pruned in ways that honor their own tendency toward health and abundance, not forced into artificial forms. Flowers bloom one after another through the seasons, not by pressure, but by choosing varieties that move in harmony with time. This, the monk says, mirrors the way of life the Buddha taught. We learn to work with conditions as they are, rather than demanding they be different. Often, by letting go of tight control, better results arise on their own. The path leads you to a small pond where lotus flowers rest on dark, still water. Their roots reach deep into the mud below, while their blossoms open calmly toward the light above. Some flowers are fully open, offering their centers freely to the morning air. Others remain closed, patient and complete within themselves. Nearby, a few petals loosen and drift onto the water, marking the quiet completion of their cycle. The lotus shows us the whole movement of release, the monk says, kneeling beside the pond and inviting you to join him. It lets go of staying closed when the time for opening arrives. It opens fully without holding back. And when its season passes, it releases even its beauty, allowing change without resistance. As you kneel beside him, a soft breeze moves across the water. Leaves sway gently. Petals tremble and settle. Nothing struggles. Nothing argues with the moment. The water receives the wind. The plants respond without complaint. Each form follows its own timing, complete in its unfolding and its fading. In our lives, the monk continues quietly, we often resist these transitions. We cling to closure when life invites openness. We fear full blooming because it carries the risk of pain. We resist aging, holding tightly to former versions of ourselves, even when that grasping brings suffering. After a while, he speaks again. "Let me offer you a story," he says, his voice lowering into the rhythm of a teaching meant to be felt as much as heard. Long ago, two monks were walking together along a muddy road after heavy rain. When they reached a swollen stream, they found a young woman standing at the edge, distressed, unsure how to cross without ruining her fine clothing. Without hesitation, the older monk stepped forward, lifted her gently, and carried her across the water. He set her down safely and continued on his way. The younger monk followed in silence, but his thoughts grew restless. His steps became uneven. His breath tightened. Finally, unable to contain himself, he spoke. "How could you do that? Our vows forbid such contact. You have broken the rules and compromised your purity." The older monk stopped and turned toward him, his face calm, almost amused. "Brother," he said softly, "I set that woman down at the stream hours ago. Why are you still carrying her?" The meaning of the story spreads through you like ripples across the pond. How often do you continue carrying moments long after they have ended? How much energy is spent holding what is already finished? Conversations that cannot be changed. Situations that have already passed. As the water grows still again and the lotus rests quietly in the fading light, you feel an invitation to set something down. Not all at once. Not with force. Just gently. And as your breath slows and your body grows heavy with rest, the teaching continues to settle, softly guiding you toward sleep. You rest with the meaning of the story, and the monk's voice continues, calm and compassionate. The younger monk's suffering did not arise from what happened at the stream, he explains, but from his inability to allow the moment to end. By clinging to judgment and rigid rules, he transformed a brief encounter into hours of inner conflict. He carried something that had already been set down, and in doing so, created his own pain. Sitting beside the lotus pond, you begin to recognize familiar patterns within yourself. Conversations from long ago that still return uninvited, replayed again and again as if repetition could change their outcome. Childhood wounds that you guard carefully, fearing that letting them go might somehow erase their importance or excuse the harm that was done. Worries about futures that may never arrive, creating suffering now for events that exist only in imagination. Letting go does not mean not caring, the monk says gently, sensing the subtle stirrings in your heart. It does not mean becoming cold or indifferent. It does not mean ignoring injustice or refusing to learn from experience. It means caring so deeply that love is no longer weighed down by desperate grasping. It means honoring what has been without demanding that it last forever. It means welcoming what is unfolding without forcing it to match your expectations. The morning sun now stands high, scattering patterns of light across the pond as small ripples catch and release its brightness. You notice water striders gliding across the surface, supported not by struggle, but by trust. They move without breaking through, allowing the water to hold them. Each movement creates gentle circles that expand, then quietly vanish. Another teaching reveals itself. How to move through life supported by trust rather than control. "Are you hungry?" the monk asks softly, just as bells begin to ring across the monastery. Their clear tones travel through the valley, rising from silence and returning to silence again. Each sound appears, lingers briefly, then dissolves, echoing the nature of all things. Eating mindfully is another way to practice release, he explains as he leads you toward the dining hall. We can savor each bite fully without clinging, allowing flavors to arise and pass naturally. The hall reflects the same simplicity you have seen everywhere. Natural materials, balanced proportions, spaces that feel welcoming rather than imposing. Inside, quiet sounds of preparation fill the air. Bowls being set down, mats unrolled, soft voices preparing to receive nourishment together. Low wooden tables show the smoothness of years of use. Each place holds a single bowl, chopsticks wrapped in cloth, a cup for tea. Monks take their seats in calm order, movements steady and unhurried. There is no rushing, no competition, no anxiety about having enough. Needs are met without excess, without lack. Before eating begins, silence settles over the hall, deep and gentle. A monk rises and chants words of gratitude, honoring the farmers, the earth, the rain, the sun, and the countless hands that made this meal possible. Gratitude, your teacher whispers, allows us to receive without entitlement and appreciate abundance without clinging. Food is served with mindful care. Portions are offered evenly, received with a small bow. Giving and receiving flow naturally, like a quiet dance. Your bowl holds simple rice, seasonal vegetables, and warm soup. Nothing elaborate, yet when you take the first slow bite, fully present, the flavors feel complete and satisfying. When we are not wishing food were different, the monk says softly, we can taste what is truly here. Rice is allowed to be rice. Vegetables are allowed to be themselves. Eating becomes a meditation in release. Each bite appreciated, then gently released to make room for the next. Notice how each bite ends on its own, he continues. We do not have to force it or prolong it. Completion creates space naturally. This is how letting go works everywhere in life. As the meal ends, bowls are cleaned carefully, to use to rinse, cloths wiping each surface spotless. Nothing wasted, nothing saved unnecessarily. Everything completes its purpose, then moves on. This too is letting go, the monk explains. We honor what has served us by finishing it fully, then releasing it cleanly. Afterward, monks disperse naturally. Some to gardens, some to workshops, some to quiet practice. No rigid urgency, no forced productivity. Even the daily rhythm practices letting go, your teacher observes. Intentions are held lightly, allowing conditions to guide response. He invites you to walk again, explaining that walking meditation reveals release in motion. Each step requires leaving the previous one behind. The body knows this. Awareness simply makes it visible. You walk slowly, noticing the lift of the foot, the shift forward, the trust as it meets the ground again. Balance happens through constant letting go. It feels effortless when not resisted. Trying to hold peaceful states, the monk says, only disturbs them. The moment we grasp at calm, fear its ending, or demand its stay, agitation appears. You remember times you tried to force relaxation, creating tension instead. The path moves past workshops where monks shape wood with patient care. They do not fight the material. They listen to it. They help it become what it already wants to be. You pass herb gardens, plants arranged by understanding rather than control. Each grows according to its nature, yet harmony arises through cooperation. The gardeners release the need to make everything the same, offering attention instead of force. Laundry hangs in the open air, robes drying in the mountain breeze. Even this is done in partnership with conditions, not against them. Simplicity supports release, the monk says quietly. With less to cling to, the heart rests more easily. This is not deprivation, but clarity. Knowing the difference between true needs and endless wanting. As the afternoon light softens and your steps grow slower, these teachings settle gently within you. Nothing to force. Nothing to hold. Just a gradual easing, as if your mind and body are learning how to rest in the natural rhythm of release, preparing you quietly, tenderly, for sleep. You begin to reflect on your own living space. Rooms filled with objects that are rarely touched, yet feel strangely difficult to release. Clothes that hang unworn, books unlikely to be opened again, items kept not from usefulness but from a quiet belief that they might be needed someday. You sense how much subtle energy is spent organizing, protecting, cleaning, and worrying about things that add little real nourishment to daily life. Attachment to objects is often attachment to identity, the monk says softly, as if following the natural current of your thoughts. We believe our possessions define who we are, prove our value, promise security against an uncertain future. Yet identities built on accumulation are fragile. Objects age, break, lose relevance. Our interests shift. Circumstances change. What once felt essential slowly becomes meaningless, leaving behind the anxiety of holding on. As the afternoon unfolds, you notice how effortlessly you are settling into the monastery's rhythm. Time behaves differently here. It does not rush forward or drag behind. It moves at the pace of awareness, where each activity arises naturally, receives full attention, then ends without clinging. Nothing is forced, yet nothing is left undone. Gardens receive exactly the care they require, without excessive tending that would disrupt their balance. Buildings are maintained with respect, not obsession. Conversations happen when connection is needed, and silence is embraced when it supports reflection. There is no avoidance of solitude and no fear of togetherness. Life flows between these states without tension. The walking meditation comes to rest at a small contemplation garden. Stone sculptures stand among flowering plants that bloom in gentle succession throughout the seasons. Unlike museum pieces protected from touch and time, these forms live openly in the landscape. Rain, sun, and wind slowly reshape them, returning them gradually to the earth from which they came. These sculptures teach impermanence beautifully, your guide says as you sit beside a stone Buddha whose features have softened over many years. Moss gathers in quiet hollows. Rain has smoothed sharp edges. Time has not diminished the statue's presence, but deepened its serenity. The sculptor knew his work would change, the monk explains, resting his hand on the sun-warmed stone. Instead of resisting nature, he chose to cooperate with it. He allowed time to become part of the art. This is also a teaching about aging. Time can soften us without stripping away dignity or purpose. You notice how water has carved subtle paths along the stone, guiding itself naturally. Wind has polished some surfaces while leaving others textured. Even traces left by birds have become part of the whole. Nothing rejected. Nothing forced away. Human beauty follows the same law. The monk continues gently. His own face carries lines shaped by years of attention and care. Hair silvered not as loss, but as distinction. When we resist aging, demanding the body remain unchanged, suffering arises. When we allow time to reshape us, another kind of beauty appears, one rooted in meaning rather than surface. What if aging were simply another form of letting go, he asks quietly, releasing attachment to former versions of yourself, and opening to the wisdom each stage of life offers. As the sun lowers toward the western peaks, shadows lengthen across the garden. The monk invites you to return to the main buildings. Tonight, he says, we will explore letting go through formal meditation. Some release comes naturally through understanding. Other release is cultivated gently, over time, through practice. The meditation hall stands at the heart of the monastery. Light filters through paper windows, bathing the space in a soft golden glow. It feels both intimate and vast, quiet yet alive. Monks arrive calmly, choosing cushions without ownership or preference. Each movement is relaxed, unforced. You are guided to a cushion near the wall, where you can sit comfortably and observe. Meditation, the monk explains, is our most direct training in non-attachment. We learn to witness experience without grasping or resisting. When everyone is seated, a deep stillness settles over the hall. Not silence created by effort, but quiet that arises naturally when many minds rest together. Today, we practice letting go, the monk says gently. Begin by noticing your breath. Do not control it. Simply observe. You close your eyes. Almost immediately, you notice the urge to adjust the breath, to deepen it, to slow it, to make it better. Even this reveals attachment, the desire to manage what already knows how to function. Notice this impulse, the monk guides softly. See if you can allow breathing to be exactly as it is. Your breath has sustained you your entire life without instruction. At first, this feels difficult. The breath seems imperfect, too shallow, too uneven. Yet each attempt to improve it creates tension. Perhaps this is the teaching itself. Control interferes with wisdom. Let the breath breathe itself, he says. Gradually, by returning again and again to simple observation, you begin to trust. Sometimes the breath is deep, sometimes light, all of it sufficient, all of it complete. This is the first layer of letting go, the monk explains quietly, releasing the need to manage what already functions beautifully, trusting the intelligence that sustains you even when you sleep. As your breathing settles, your body grows heavier. The hall feels warmer. Thoughts soften. And without effort, you find yourself drifting toward rest, carried gently by the rhythm that has always known how to hold you. How was that practice for you? He asks, his tone sincere and open, inviting honesty rather than any rehearsed or pleasing answer. You pause, sensing how difficult it is to describe something so subtle yet quietly meaningful. The gradual loosening of control over breath, body, feelings, and thought. The sense of space that appeared when you stopped trying to manage every detail of experience. The realization that thoughts and emotions could be noticed without becoming completely fused with each one that surfaced in awareness. Many people expect letting go to arrive as a dramatic moment. He reflects after listening, nodding with the understanding of someone who has accompanied countless students through similar insights. As if a heavy burden carried for years is suddenly dropped, bringing instant relief and lasting change. Sometimes, he acknowledges, it does unfold that way, especially when deep attachments causing great suffering are released. His aged hands rest calmly in his lap, embodying a way of holding even wisdom lightly. More often, however, letting go resembles what you encountered just now. A gentle settling, a soft easing of grip, the recognition that you were holding tighter than necessary. Like opening a fist you didn't realize was clenched, or lowering shoulders you didn't know were tense. This description resonates more closely with your experience than ideas of sudden awakening or dramatic transformation. Letting go felt less like attaining something new and more like rediscovering natural ease. Less like learning, more like remembering how to relax. As the meditation ended, evening light stretched long and golden, bathing the hall in warm amber hues that seemed to slow time even further. Through the paper windows, the first stars appeared in the deepening sky, tiny points of light traveling immense distances to arrive in your awareness at this exact moment. Let's step outside, your teacher suggests, rising with the smooth, effortless grace of someone whose body has learned how to move without haste or force. Evening air often helps integrate deep practice, he explains, and twilight itself naturally supports the teaching of letting go. The monastery courtyard feels transformed in the fading light. Paths once practical now seem mysterious. Stone surfaces that appeared merely functional during the day now glow softly, as if lit from within. Lanterns line the walkways, casting warm pools of light that guide movement without overpowering the surrounding darkness. Darkness teaches letting go. The monk observes as you walk slowly together. Your steps become more careful, more deliberate. When we cannot see everything clearly, we release the illusion of control. We trust our feet to find the ground. We rely on the light available for the next step, letting go of worries about shadows beyond our vision. This walk becomes another meditation, releasing the certainty daylight provides, trusting the body's quiet intelligence to adjust to uneven ground, accepting guidance from partial illumination without demanding complete clarity of the entire path. Your feet find stable placement on stone. Balance shifts naturally. Life often asks this same trust. Your teacher says as the path curves around a garden bed, the way forward revealed only step by step. We rarely know what lies ahead. We move forward with what guidance we have, loosening the need to see everything in advance, to control every outcome, to anticipate every obstacle. The path leads to a small cemetery you have not visited before. Simple stone markers rest quietly, honoring monks who lived and practiced here across generations. There are no grand monuments, no attempts to defy time. The stones are modest, weathered by rain and sun, some inscriptions softened until only their shapes remain. Fresh flowers rest on a few graves. Others are adorned by fallen leaves and moss, arranged by season rather than intention. Small offerings appear here and there, smooth stones, simple fruit that birds will later eat, cups of water that will return to sky and soil. This place teaches the final letting go, your teacher says softly as you walk among the markers. Each one belongs to someone who faced the release that awaits all beings. Letting go of the body that carried them through life. Letting go of identity, possessions, relationships, stories once held so tightly. The atmosphere feels peaceful, not heavy. Contemplative, not frightening. Death is approached here as teacher, not enemy. As a natural transition rather than a failure. As the completion of practice, not its undoing. In Buddhism, we practice dying before death arrives. The monk continues, stopping before a marker carved simply with a name, dates, and a small lotus. We train ourselves to release attachment to what we believe defines us, discovering what remains when identifications gently fall away through practice rather than force. You reflect on what it means to practice dying while alive. Letting go of the need to be right. Releasing the hunger for approval. softening attachment to possessions, roles, even personality traits used to build a solid sense of self. What remains when these supports are loosened? Brother Chen lived here for 60 years, your teacher says, noticing your attention to the lotus carving. He taught letting go not through words alone, but through how he aged and eventually died, with curiosity instead of fear. Even in illness, he remained interested in what dying could teach, rather than clinging desperately to life. Seeing death as a teacher challenges habits that frame dying as ultimate failure. What if death, like all experiences, could be met with awareness rather than terror? What if the dying process offered teachings unavailable anywhere else? We practice letting go in small ways throughout life. The monk continues as you walk among stones softened by time, so when the final release comes, it feels familiar. Each moment of accepting things as they are prepares us for the ultimate acceptance shared by all. The cemetery visit feels unexpectedly calming. When death is approached as wisdom rather than spectacle, life itself becomes more precious. Awareness of impermanence deepens appreciation instead of diminishing meaning. Death awareness is one of our greatest teachers, your guide says as you return toward the monastery. Knowing this body, this personality, this collection of memories is temporary helps us hold everything more gently, appreciating fully without desperate clinging. Back among the living spaces, monks move through evening routines. Some converse quietly, others read by lamplight. A few practice calligraphy, each stroke slow and attentive. Everything unfolds without hurry. Activities arise for their own sake, then end naturally. Even our evenings practice letting go, your teacher observes. Reading without rushing. Speaking without agenda. Doing without demanding outcomes. He invites you to share evening tea in a small room overlooking the garden, now transformed by lantern light into something quietly magical. The tea itself becomes meditation, receiving each cup with gratitude, savoring each sip without trying to hold it, allowing warmth to fade, night to deepen, and experience to pass, just as it is meant to. The plain green tea, offered without sugar, milk, or embellishment, becomes another gentle lesson in accepting what is present rather than reshaping experience to fit familiar preferences. The faint bitterness turns curious instead of unpleasant when met with attentive awareness. Earthy notes slowly reveal themselves, details that remain hidden when drinking is hurried or purely functional instead of contemplative. Tomorrow, the monk says softly as you sip the tea and watch evening settle across the garden below, we will explore how letting go transforms our relationships. Often our deepest attachments live there, in expectations about how others should behave, what we believe they owe us for our care, or what we imagine we need from them to feel safe and complete. The words touch something tender and immediately familiar. Memories arise of suffering when others failed to meet expectations, changed in ways you could not accept, or withheld affection or appreciation you felt you had earned. How much conflict grows from these silent demands and unseen agreements? Relationships are our most intense training in letting go, he continues, warmth from the tea spreading gently through your chest as you recognize the truth of this. We cannot control other people, no matter how strongly we wish to or how certain we feel about what is best for them. We cannot make ourselves lovable through perfection. We cannot force change through criticism, nor secure permanence through preference. The tea ceremony unfolds in comfortable silence. Each sip becomes practice, receiving what is offered without demand. appreciating flavor without grasping, allowing warmth to fade and taste to change without resistance. As night deepens and the tea cools beyond easy drinking, your teacher suggests preparing for rest. Sleep itself is a profound letting go, he explains as you rise from the small table. We release conscious control. We allow the body to heal itself through processes we do not manage. We trust unconsciousness to be safe and to return us refreshed rather than diminished by the temporary dissolving of identity. Sleep becomes spiritual practice, not just biological need. Another daily chance to release control and trust natural wisdom. He guides you back to the simple guest room where your mat awaits, dressed in clean linens with a modest pillow offering just enough support. The room holds only what is necessary, nothing extra to distract, nothing lacking to disturb rest. Before sleeping, he suggests, release the entire day. Let the mind settle without forcing silence. Let the body find comfort without demanding perfection. Release expectations about sleep itself, trusting rest to arrive when conditions allow. You prepare for bed following his guidance, noticing how different this feels from usual routines filled with effort and quiet anxiety. Instead of chasing sleep, you allow the day to complete itself, neither rushing toward unconsciousness nor resisting wakefulness. You simply rest within what is. Monastery bells sound softly in the distance, marking the shift from evening into night with the same gentle rhythm that governs all living cycles. Even their tones invite release, easing awareness toward rest and trusting ancient patterns that have carried life across generations. Sleep arrives easily, perhaps because you are no longer trying to make it happen. Dreams, when they appear, feel lighter and less gripping. The mind seems less inclined to build heavy stories. Rest feels deeper, uninterrupted by familiar struggles or anxious rehearsals. Even sleep becomes letting go when allowed to unfold naturally. Morning comes with bells and gradual light through the window. Awakening is unhurried, organic, free from sharp alarms. You remain still for a few moments, honoring the transition from sleep to wakefulness without immediate action or planning. Even waking becomes practice. Your teacher greets you after you've washed and prepared for the day, his presence calm and settled. "How did you sleep?" he asks, inviting honesty. You reflect on how rest felt different when you stopped trying to manage it. Dreams were less consuming, more like scenes observed than experiences inhabited. Perhaps letting go during the day extends naturally into the night. "Good," he nods. Sleep is one of our greatest teachers. We cannot remain awake by force. We cannot control dreams. Each night offers practice in dying and returning, trusting processes beyond effort. Seen this way, sleep becomes conscious training in non-attachment, preparing us gently for the final letting go. Morning follows the monastery rhythm. A simple breakfast, mindful work, quiet preparation for the day's final teaching. Later, your teacher invites you to walk toward the forest above the monastery. Today, he explains as you climb the gentle path, we explore how to carry letting go back into more complex conditions. The trail winds through pines and open clearings where wildflowers grow freely. Light filters through branches in shifting patterns, a living lesson in impermanence. Everything here shows how to hold what is essential while remaining flexible. Roots anchor trees deeply. Branches bend with storms. Life adapts without losing itself. Returning will be challenging, your teacher acknowledges. Here, environment and schedule support release. At home, pressures often reinforce clinging. The thought feels realistic, slightly daunting. How to preserve insight amid complexity. Begin small, he advises as you rest on a sun-warmed log. Release minor preferences, opinions about weather, judgments about others, demands that plans unfold exactly as imagined. You sit quietly, appreciating the log serving perfectly without design. Another lesson in meeting conditions as they are. As skill grows, he continues, so does capacity. Releasing small attachments trains the mind. In time, it learns to loosen its grip on greater ones, naturally and without force. The morning sun has risen high enough to gently warm the open clearing, while pockets of shade remain cool and soothing, creating a natural balance of temperature that allows each person to settle where comfort feels most natural. Even in this quiet detail, nature reveals its wisdom, offering abundance without insisting on uniformity, reminding you that contentment does not require identical conditions for all. As this understanding settles, your teacher speaks softly, asking what questions arise about carrying these teachings back into your everyday life. He shifts slightly on his wooden seat, relaxed yet attentive, embodying the calm awareness that flows through all his movements and stillness alike. His question opens a quiet space for practical reflection, allowing the teachings to remain alive rather than distant ideals admired only in retreat. You begin to reflect on the challenges awaiting your return. Relationships that awaken strong emotions and familiar habits of wanting others to change. Work environments that demand swift decisions, leaving little room for deliberate contemplation. Cultural rhythms that reward accumulation and achievement rather than simplicity and release. Daily routines so full that extended periods of meditation feel difficult to maintain. Listening with steady presence, your teacher responds with the gentle confidence of someone who has woven these teachings into ordinary life, not confined them to secluded places. The most essential practice, he says, is remembering that letting go is always available. No matter how tangled or demanding circumstances appear, you can loosen the grip that insists things must be different from how they are. This does not mean passivity or avoidance, but acting from clarity rather than fear, from wisdom rather than clinging to fixed outcomes. He suggests simple reminders that reconnect you with this practice without requiring special time or conditions. Taking 3 conscious breaths before meals, releasing urgency around productivity and control. Noticing moments when your body or mind tightens, and gently experimenting with softening that tension. Ending each day by releasing stored disappointments or strain, allowing sleep to restore you naturally rather than carrying unresolved weight into rest. Pauses, his weathered hands resting calmly in his lap, and reminds you that letting go is not a single achievement, but a lifelong practice that deepens gradually over time rather than through forceful effort. You will forget, he says gently. Old patterns of control will return. When you notice this, meet the recognition with kindness instead of judgment. This permission to practice imperfectly feels liberating, lifting the burden of needing to apply wisdom flawlessly while still learning how it unfolds in real life. The path naturally includes forgetting, followed by remembering, periods of attachment that bring discomfort, followed by awareness and release. Simply recognizing attachment as it arises is already the beginning of letting go. You do not need to release everything at once, your teacher emphasizes. Noticing, oh, I am gripping this tightly, or I am demanding this person be different, creates enough space for softening to begin on its own. As the morning advances and the time for departure approaches, he guides you back along the forest path toward the monastery buildings. Each step carries you gently closer to the transition from this sheltered environment back into the complexity of ordinary life. Descending the path requires a different quality of attention than the climb upward, illustrating another dimension of letting go, responding skillfully as conditions change rather than clinging to familiar methods. Walking downhill asks for careful placement, awareness of balance, a sensitivity to momentum distinct from ascent. Even this simple movement becomes a teaching. Observing you navigate a steeper section scattered with loose stones, the monk notes that we cannot descend using the same techniques that carried us upward. We must release attachment to previous approaches and respond freshly to present conditions while maintaining mindfulness and care. By midday, you arrive once more within the monastery grounds and complete the quiet rituals that mark preparation for leaving. Gathering your few belongings, offering gratitude to those whose presence and example supported your learning, sharing a final meal that honors both your time here and your return to life beyond these walls. Leaving itself becomes the final lesson, appreciating all that was received while releasing attachment to staying longer or expecting insights to remain unchanged when carried elsewhere. Gratitude arises without clinging to form, and sadness appears without resistance to natural transition. As departure nears, other monks gather, offering simple farewells rooted in shared practice rather than obligation. Some bow gently, saying more through silence than words. Others offer brief phrases of encouragement, carrying the weight of lived experience rather than polite convention. Each interaction reflects meaningful connection without grasping or expectation. Though your stay was brief by monastery standards, the bonds feel authentic, grounded in mutual exploration rather than social familiarity. Your teacher walks with you to the monastery gate, where the path descends toward the valley and your return. The morning has reached a perfect balance, neither warm nor cool enough to dominate awareness, supporting presence without distraction or indulgence. At the threshold between stillness and complexity, he reminds you that these teachings are not separate from ordinary life, but reveal its nature when seen clearly. Every experience, from simple tasks to profound challenges, becomes an opportunity to practice release when met with understanding. He places something small in your palm, a simple wooden bead, smoothed by years of handling, like those found on prayer mallets across Buddhist traditions. Warm from his touch, it fits naturally between finger and thumb, meant for use rather than display. Whenever you notice it, he says softly, "Take one conscious breath and release whatever you are holding too tightly." Not forcing change, simply softening and allowing what follows to unfold. The gift feels perfectly suited, neither precious nor elaborate, meaningful without encouraging attachment. A quiet companion for practice in any setting. With a final bow that honors both your path and the shared human longing for freedom from suffering, he reminds you that nothing learned here was foreign. These truths were always present within your experience, waiting to be recognized. The true teacher is your willingness to release when holding creates pain, your capacity to soften when tension arises. With gratitude as natural as breath, and a gentle sadness that does not disturb your peace, you begin the descent back toward ordinary life. Each step becomes practice, releasing attachment to the monastery while carrying forward the understanding it clarified. The path teaches again, requiring each step to be released before the next can appear, embodying the rhythm of holding and letting go that shapes all healthy movement. As the monastery fades behind bends and ridges, the teachings remain clear and alive, no longer dependent on setting or silence. The wooden bead rests quietly in your pocket, present without demanding attention. Occasionally you touch it, not as superstition, but as a reminder of intention, to choose release over resistance whenever life offers the chance. By midday, you reach the small village where your journey began. Nothing has changed, yet everything feels subtly different. Buildings and pathways appear as temporary arrangements, fluid rather than fixed, no longer asked to provide permanence or certainty. Waiting for transportation, you sit at a small cafe overlooking the square where daily life unfolds in timeless patterns. Merchants arrange goods with hopeful care. Children adapt their games as conditions shift. Elders share conversation on benches shaped by countless years of use. Each person carries their own joys and burdens, attachments and moments of effortless release. A young mother comforts a crying child, her face reflecting love and strain intertwined. You see how letting go of demanding immediate quiet might open space for gentler responses, still caring deeply, yet releasing the tension of expectation. Nearby, an elderly man feeds pigeons, his presence calm and unburdened. The birds come and go freely, receiving without obligation, offering a quiet lesson in generosity without attachment. As your transportation arrives, the final transition begins. Fields give way to towns, towns to cities, yet the teachings adapt effortlessly. Rather than judging complexity against simplicity, you practice appreciating each environment while releasing the wish for things to remain unchanged. The monastery offered ideal conditions for learning. Now comes the deeper practice, carrying understanding into noise, pressure, and movement, where letting go becomes not an idea, but a living response to life as it unfolds. Yet perhaps this is exactly what gives these teachings their true value, rather than leaving them as rare and exotic experiences found only in secluded retreats. Wisdom that cannot move freely within ordinary circumstances offers little help to those who must work, sustain relationships, fulfill responsibilities, and move through complex social worlds, rather than live within protected contemplative communities. Hours pass as you travel steadily back into familiar territory, each mile carrying you farther from monastery simplicity and closer to the layered complexity of your own life. The wooden bead rests quietly in your pocket, touched now and then as a gentle reminder, though it no longer serves as a deliberate prompt. Letting go has begun to settle into your natural responses, no longer a technique requiring effort, but a quality of awareness unfolding on its own. Evening arrives as you finally return to your neighborhood, your street, your familiar surroundings, appearing at once unchanged and subtly transformed. The physical environment remains exactly as you left it, yet your perception has softened and clarified through days of release, allowing you to see these ordinary conditions with fresh attention rather than habitual disregard. Entering your living space, you immediately notice the number of objects surrounding you. Not excessive by common standards, yet striking after the monastery's simplicity, where each item served a clear purpose and nothing accumulated without intention. Every possession reflects some attachment to comfort, safety, identity, memory, or imagined future need. These attachments, you realize, are not inherently harmful, but become sources of suffering when held with tight grasping rather than gentle appreciation. The monastery did not teach rejection of material things, but a wiser relationship with them, using what supports genuine well-being while releasing anxiety around loss, damage, or disappearance of what can be replaced or lived without. You place the wooden bead on a small shelf where it will appear naturally in daily life, a quiet reminder that these teachings must now reveal their truth through ordinary experience rather than retreat conditions. You sit in your familiar chair and take 3 slow breaths, grounding yourself in the present moment instead of immediately organizing plans or responsibilities. The first days back unfold quietly as you begin applying letting go to routine moments and familiar challenges. Morning coffee becomes a practice of appreciation without clinging, savoring warmth and flavor while releasing the wish for the moment to last longer than it naturally does. Enjoyment remains, but expectation loosens. At work, situations arise that reveal how tightly you grip certain outcomes, how effort can turn into strain when control extends beyond your actual influence. Letting go does not diminish your care or commitment, but it does soften the unnecessary pressure created by demanding that everything unfold according to preference and schedule. A difficult conversation with a family member offers deeper practice. Old emotional patterns surface when they express views you consider misguided or make choices you fear may lead to suffering. These reactions feel familiar, like well-worn habits requiring no awareness. Yet, alongside frustration, a new clarity emerges, like morning light gradually illuminating a known landscape. You recognize that it is possible to love fully while releasing attachment to agreement, to offer perspective clearly without insisting it be accepted, to care deeply without assuming responsibility for another's decisions. The conversation does not resolve all differences, nor does it erase disagreement. They remain free to accept or ignore your words according to their own understanding. What changes is your relationship to the difference itself. Letting go creates space for love without the burden of control, for compassion without the exhausting task of fixing what cannot be changed from outside another's life. You remain free to offer support while releasing the role of managing another person's path. They remain free to respond as they will, without that response altering your respect or affection for them. Weeks pass as these teachings continue integrating through countless small moments rather than dramatic shifts. Progress moves in waves rather than straight lines. Some days feel open and light, others fall back into familiar tension. Yet even forgetting becomes part of the teaching when met with kindness instead of judgment, allowing wisdom to grow gently, without adding suffering on top of suffering. Each moment of noticing attachment becomes a fresh doorway into release, without judgment about how the clinging appeared or how long it remained unseen. A work project collapses despite careful planning and sincere effort, stirring familiar waves of disappointment and self-blame that rise almost automatically, like reflexive movements of the mind. These reactions feel reasonable given the time invested, the hopes placed upon success, and the consequences that may follow unmet expectations. Yet alongside these natural responses, space quietly opens to examine the many conditions that shape the outcome beyond your control or reasonable foresight. The failure, though genuinely painful and potentially costly, does not need to harden into evidence of personal inadequacy or fuel prolonged suffering that serves no healing purpose. It stands simply as one result arising from countless intersecting causes, most of which no single person can fully manage or predict. Learning what is useful while releasing attachment to how things should have turned out allows energy to move forward rather than remain trapped in regret over what cannot be changed. One evening, while walking through a nearby park as autumn gently colors the leaves, you encounter a scene that reflects these teachings without effort or interpretation. An elderly woman sits quietly on a bench feeding ducks by a small pond. Her movements are slow and attentive, her presence calm in a way that suggests years of finding contentment in simple acts. The ducks approach and depart according to their own rhythms, accepting food without obligation to entertain, linger, or express gratitude. She offers what she has brought without expectation, neither upset when some ducks ignore the bread nor attached to those that stay. When the food is gone and the ducks wander off toward other needs, she watches their leaving with the same ease she offered their arrival. There is no wish for them to remain, no sadness that the moment has ended, no concern about whether they will return tomorrow. You ask if you may sit beside her for a few minutes, drawn not by conversation but by the quiet clarity she embodies. She nods gently, and you sit together in silence as evening light dances across the water's surface, shifting with each breeze. "They know I'll come again if I can," she says softly, more to the pond than to you. "And if I don't, they'll manage just fine." That's how life moves when we stop trying to control it or make everything about ourselves. Her words echo the monastery teachings, expressed through ordinary language available to anyone, regardless of belief or background. Perhaps this is how letting go truly lives within everyday life, not through dramatic renunciation or special practices, but through countless small releases, softened expectations, and trust in life's unfolding intelligence beyond personal preference. As months pass after your time at the monastery, subtle changes emerge in how you meet situations that once caused stress or dissatisfaction. Relationships feel lighter when no longer filtered through constant expectations of how others should behave. Work becomes more creative and less exhausting when effort is offered without gripping results too tightly. Projects flow more smoothly when care and skill replace anxious determination. Even difficulties feel more workable when approached with curiosity rather than resistance, without demanding immediate resolution according to personal timelines. This does not mean avoiding action, but meeting challenges with flexibility born from releasing fixed ideas of how solutions must appear. The wooden bead rests quietly on your shelf, no longer required as a reminder, as letting go has become more natural than clinging in many areas of life. You still plan, care, and hold preferences, but these human activities now unfold within a wider field of acceptance, free from the exhausting demand to control what lies beyond your reach. One evening while preparing dinner, you notice how completely absorbed you are in chopping vegetables. The knife finds its rhythm effortlessly. Fresh scents rise with each cut. Whole ingredients transform into nourishment. The task becomes meditative without intention, attention resting naturally in the present rather than wandering through past or future concerns. Perhaps this reveals how letting go seeps gently into daily life when practiced not as achievement, but as a sensible response to constant change. Cooking continues with ease, appreciating each ingredient without demanding perfect results, adjusting naturally to conditions rather than rigid expectations. Even washing dishes becomes mindful, feeling warm water and noticing how patience and gentle pressure restore cleanliness. These ordinary moments show how wisdom lives quietly when fully integrated, no longer a technique, but like breathing, supporting life without effort. Later that evening, as day softens into night, you reflect on how deeply your relationship with experience has shifted since the monastery. Much remains the same: home, work, routines, yet your way of meeting them has transformed through releasing the need for reality to conform to preference. You still act, care, and strive when appropriate, but now from understanding rather than grasping. As you prepare for sleep on this ordinary evening months later, you recognize how naturally letting go has woven itself into your life, not as something special, but as wisdom responding gently to what cannot be controlled. Sleep approaches as you release the day, appreciating what was without clinging to moments already passing into memory. You acknowledge the day's difficulties without carrying them into rest, where they might interfere with the body's natural restoration. You allow your body to settle into whatever position offers sufficient comfort, without insisting on perfect ease or ideal conditions. Even this gentle movement from wakefulness into sleep becomes another quiet practice of letting go. Conscious control softens and releases, while trust grows in the natural processes that know how to provide rest and renewal without supervision or correction from the thinking mind. Your breathing gradually slows as relaxation deepens. Each exhale becomes a small release. Muscles soften that you hadn't realized were holding tension. Thoughts loosen their grip, no longer needing to revisit the day or organize tomorrow. Any concern about how sleep should arrive or how the future should unfold gently dissolves. The simple wooden bead rests silently on its shelf, no longer needed as a reminder, because letting go has become as natural as breathing, as steady as the heartbeat, as effortless as the countless inner processes that sustain life without instruction or oversight. When dreams arise during the night, they feel lighter and less gripping than before, no longer pulling you into emotional struggle or anxious rehearsal. The habit of not clinging during the day naturally extends into sleep, allowing dream images to drift without needing meaning or interpretation. Sleep becomes deeper and more nourishing when approached as surrender rather than unconscious struggle with accumulated tension. The body understands how to restore itself when mental interference fades and natural intelligence is allowed to work unhindered. If you awaken during the night, as sometimes happens with changing seasons or minor discomforts, this too becomes part of practice. You release the expectation of uninterrupted sleep and appreciate whatever rest has already been received. You allow your body to adjust naturally, without forcing comfort or perfection. These moments become opportunities for gentleness rather than frustration. You may notice the quiet darkness, distant sounds, or the faint presence of stars beyond the window, details usually overlooked during the busyness of day. Morning will come when conditions naturally support awakening, bringing another day of ordinary moments and unexpected lessons. But for now, you are held within this peaceful settling, supported by the same wisdom that has guided every night of rest you have ever known. The teachings continue to work quietly within you as awareness drifts toward sleep, integrating beyond thought and intention. Your body rests without your management. Your breath flows without instruction. Your heart continues its steady rhythm through waking and sleeping alike, needing no supervision. You release the need to understand how these processes function so perfectly without your involvement. You release the habit of monitoring your progress toward sleep or judging how well you are practicing letting go. You release remaining tensions, lingering concerns, expectations about how this night should unfold. You allow yourself to be supported by the intelligence that moves the seasons, guides migrations, opens flowers when conditions are right, and brings forth growth at the appropriate time. Everything arises and fades according to causes arranged through wisdom far greater than any single mind can comprehend or direct. Even this settling into rest unfolds from precise conditions: tiredness gathered through the day, mental ease cultivated through release, a safe environment, and the natural rhythm calling all beings toward renewal. You do not need to create or improve these conditions. They arrange themselves according to ancient biological knowing that requires no guidance. Trust the process that has carried you safely through every night of your life and will continue to do so regardless of understanding or effort. If thoughts still arise, you let them pass as well, noticed without pursuit, allowed without resistance. Thinking quiets naturally as sleep approaches, without force or encouragement. You let go of doing anything about anything. You let go of fixing, improving, or perfecting this moment. You let go of measuring your progress or evaluating spiritual performance. You rest in the ease that appears when experience is allowed to be exactly as it is. When effort dissolves, the body settles more deeply into supportive stillness. Breathing continues in its own rhythm, sometimes deep, sometimes light, always appropriate. Sounds around you simply exist, without needing judgment or adjustment. Everything belongs here. The monastery teachings now live within you, not as ideas requiring recall, but as wisdom expressed through ease and acceptance. Letting go flows as naturally as releasing each breath, as gently as allowing one day to end so another may begin. You rest now, supported by the same intelligence that guides rivers to the sea, turns planets through space, and coordinates the countless processes within your body. You release into this vast holding, into this peace that demands nothing and provides all that is needed. You stop trying to control what functions perfectly without control. Sleep arrives as naturally as dawn follows night, as softly as mist settling into a quiet valley. You do nothing. You release everything. You trust the wisdom that has always carried you. Let go completely now. Rest in the peace of nothing needing to change. The teachings are no longer memories but living reality, moving through breath and heartbeat, through the gentle intelligence that sustains all things. Sleep arises when conditions align: tired body, quiet mind, safe surroundings, proper timing. You need only allow. And so you release fully into deep, restorative rest, where effort ends, control dissolves, and life continues its timeless rhythm of holding and releasing. Let go of everything. Rest in the vast peace of this moment. Now, gently, we turn toward an ancient Buddhist story about letting go, a teaching carried through generations by those who watched human nature and the natural world with equal clarity. In the lush forests of Southeast Asia, where palms sway in warm breezes and monkeys move through green canopies, hunters once used a simple method to capture these agile creatures. It required no force, no speed, no struggle, only an understanding of a single habit that would quietly reveal the cost of holding on. The hunters would choose a coconut and patiently hollow its core through a narrow opening, shaping it with deliberate care until it became a simple vessel for their purpose. Inside this small chamber, they placed a modest portion of sweet rice, fragrant and tempting, an offering no hungry monkey could easily ignore. The opening was fashioned with exact proportions, wide enough for an open hand to slip inside, yet too narrow for a clenched fist to escape. When an inquisitive monkey came upon this strange coconut secured to a tree, curiosity guided its actions. It reached inward, drawn by the scent, and grasped the rice. In the instant its fingers closed around the grains, it became caught, not by ropes or chains, but by its own refusal to release what it held. Freedom was always available. By simply opening its hand, the monkey could withdraw unharmed. Yet from within that narrow view, release felt impossible. Hunters would later find these monkeys seated beside their traps, sometimes for long hours, tugging desperately at their captured hands while unwilling to let go of the very thing that bound them. What promised nourishment became the source of captivity. Their natural intelligence, so apparent in other moments, seemed to vanish when faced with the quiet choice between holding and releasing. The effectiveness of this trap lay not in its physical design, but in its understanding of the mind. It transformed grasping itself into the mechanism of capture. The harder the monkey pulled, the more firmly it was trapped. The tighter it clenched the rice, the less escape seemed possible. The Buddha taught, "You only lose what you cling to." This simple truth points directly to the monkey's situation and to our own. The story reveals how attachments, even those that seem small or reasonable, can quietly become prisons that restrict our freedom. Why do we cling so fiercely to what ultimately limits us? Buddhist psychology recognizes this habit as a central cause of suffering. Like the monkey's instinct, the human mind is conditioned to grasp what appears beneficial and to hold on regardless of consequence. We close our inner fists around possessions, relationships, identities, opinions, and even spiritual experiences, believing our safety depends on the strength of our grip. This grasping touches every layer of life. We cling to former versions of ourselves that no longer support growth. We hold resentments that cloud the present. We grasp relationships beyond their natural time. We clutch achievements and comforts as though they could offer permanence. We even cling to insights meant to free us, turning them into new obstacles along the path. The coconut trap shows how what we believe will nourish us can instead confine us. The rice represents everything we convince ourselves we cannot live without. Perhaps a lifestyle, a role, an identity, a level of ease, or an image of how our spiritual path should appear. Like the monkey, we often fail to see that freedom comes from opening the hand. Master Hongpa taught, "Nothing is gained by addition. Nothing is lost by subtraction." This points toward a liberating truth. Our essential nature cannot be improved by accumulation nor diminished by release. The monkey's true being is not enhanced by holding rice, yet conditioning makes release feel like loss rather than relief. Consider the coconut traps within your own life. What are you gripping so tightly that movement becomes difficult? Perhaps it is a familiar job that no longer brings joy. Perhaps a resentment that feels justified but burdens the heart. Perhaps an image of who you believe you must be. Letting go does not mean indifference. It means holding gently, like water resting in open palms rather than ice squeezed in closed fists. When we loosen our grip on outcomes, what we truly need often arrives more naturally. Zen teacher Alan Watts observed that suffering arises when we confuse our ideas about life with life itself. The monkey cannot eat the concept of rice, yet sacrifices freedom for the illusion of possession. In the same way, we often trade peace for mental constructs that exist more in imagination than reality. Tonight, as you notice the things your mind insists you cannot release, perhaps you can experiment with opening your hand just a little. You may discover that letting go is not loss. but the feeling of freedom itself. As the Buddha reminded us, in the end, three things matter: how fully we have lived, how deeply we have loved, and how gracefully we have learned to let go. The coconut trap teaches that true strength often lies in knowing when to release. And so we turn now to a story about trusting the current of life, the tale of the Crystal River. Deep within a vast, luminous river, where water flowed clear as mountain air, there lived a community of small creatures. The current passed above them like a quiet breath, carrying the wisdom of distant springs and faraway seas. Young and old, rich and poor, all made their homes along the sandy floor, each gripping tightly to stones, roots, and fallen branches. For generations, clinging had meant survival. From birth, every creature learned to wrap its limbs around the riverbed. "Hold fast," the elders warned. "The current is dangerous. It will carry you to places unknown. Safety lies in staying exactly where you are." But one small creature grew weary of constant holding. Day after day, he watched the water flow overhead, moving with effortless grace. While others complained of aching limbs and endless effort, he wondered what it might feel like to trust that flow. "I am tired of clinging," he said one morning. "Though I cannot see where the current leads, I trust it knows its way. If I continue holding on, I fear I will fade before ever truly living." The others cried out in alarm. "Fool," they warned. "Let go, and the current will dash you against the rocks. You will be broken long before boredom could ever harm you." Yet the small creature had decided. With one final look, he released his grip. Immediately, the current seized him, and just as predicted, he was tumbled across the stones below. His body struck rock after rock, pain blooming with each impact. But something unexpected occurred. As he continued surrendering, refusing to grab new anchors, the water slowly lifted him away from the dangerous bottom. The tumbling ceased. The rocks could no longer reach him. Now he moved with the current, no longer resisting, but flowing as part of its movement. Downstream, others watched in wonder. One of their own seemed to glide through the water, carried with effortless power. "A miracle!" they cried. "He flies. Surely he is the Savior." Hearing them, the flowing creature felt compassion. "I am no savior," he called gently. "The river lifts all who dare to release. Our work is not clinging to the bottom, but trusting the journey." Yet the cries only grew louder, even as they tightened their grips. When he disappeared around a bend, legends began to form about the one who came and vanished. The Buddha's teaching echoes here again. You only lose what you cling to. We grasp for safety and control, believing tightness protects us. Yet this grasping creates the very suffering we seek to avoid. From early life, we learn that the known feels safe and the unknown dangerous. This conditioning becomes an obstacle when it prevents growth. We cling to circumstances, identities, and relationships, believing control will stop change. But life flows regardless, and resisting it drains us. Consider where you are clinging now. A role, a relationship, an image of self. The current will move whether we resist or not. Our choice is whether to exhaust ourselves or surrender with grace. The Buddha said nothing is permanent except change. Water does not fight the mountain, it finds its way. When we move with life rather than against it, effort softens into ease. Tonight, as you rest, what might you be ready to release? A worry, a memory, a definition of who you are. Can you feel the current of this moment and trust it? Let go of what is past. Let go of what may come. Let go of what is. Relax and rest. The current you feared was never your enemy. It is the path home. And so we continue with a final story, one that reveals the difference between helping and holding on. This is the lesson of the two monks and the woman at the river. Two monks traveled together along a mountain path toward a distant monastery. Both were devoted practitioners, bound by vows that included avoiding physical contact with women, not from disregard, but from discipline. At a swollen river, its bridge washed away, they encountered a woman standing uncertainly at the edge. The current was fierce, filled with debris, and fear was written across her face. "Please," she asked, "could one of you help me cross?" One monk stiffened, his mind racing through rules and justifications. The other saw only her danger. Without hesitation, he lifted her onto his shoulders and carried her safely across, setting her down gently. She thanked them and continued on. The monks resumed their journey, but something between them had quietly changed. The first monk continued walking in a silence that grew heavier with each step, his inner world restless and unsettled. Thoughts circled endlessly around what he had witnessed at the river. As the hours stretched on, his tension tightened until it could no longer remain unspoken. At last, he broke the silence. "Brother," he said, his voice strained, "I cannot understand what you did by the river. Our training clearly instructs us to avoid physical contact with women. Yet you lifted that woman onto your shoulders and carried her across the water. How could you so openly disregard our sacred vows?" The other monk paused and looked at him with gentle curiosity, as though hearing something unexpected. Then he replied with quiet simplicity, "Brother, I put her down on the far bank hours ago. You are the one still carrying her." The Buddha taught that holding on to anger is like grasping a burning coal with the intention of throwing it at another. The one who is burned is always the one who holds it. This story reveals the subtle difference between compassionate action and lingering attachment, between responding fully to what is needed and dragging the past forward into the present. Why do we so often continue to carry moments long after they have ended, replaying conversations, rehearsing judgments, and nourishing grievances that exist only within the mind? Zen wisdom teaches that much of our suffering does not arise from events themselves, but from our inability to release them once they have passed. The first monk's distress shows how rigid attachment to form can sometimes obscure the compassionate heart from which those forms were born. His companion saw a human being in danger, acted with kindness, and then allowed the moment to dissolve completely. The first monk, however, carried the event mile after mile, making it heavier with every thought. Consider your own habit of replaying past exchanges, holding old resentments, or mentally revisiting situations that are already over. How much energy is spent carrying what now exists only as memory? The woman crossed the river in moments, yet the monk carried her for hours within his mind. This teaching reaches far beyond this single story. We carry words spoken long ago, mistakes from distant years, moments of embarrassment no one else remembers. While we hold these shadows, the present moment, alive and rich, slips quietly past unnoticed. In Zen practice, we learn to distinguish between necessary action and unnecessary attachment. The second monk acted when action was required, then released the experience completely. He did not revisit his decision, worry about judgment, or repeat the moment endlessly in thought. A Zen teacher once said that because of impermanence, all things are possible. The river crossing was impermanent. It arose, fulfilled its purpose, and ended. Only the first monk's attachment kept it alive as ongoing suffering. The Buddha taught, "Let go of what is past. Let go of what may come. Let go of what is happening now. Do not try to figure anything out. Do not try to make anything happen. Relax and rest." This points directly to the freedom that appears when we stop carrying experiences beyond their natural life. Look gently at what you may still be holding: old resentments, past errors, unfinished conversations, regrets that echo softly in the mind. These remain only because they are continually picked up. What would it feel like to set them down? The irony is clear. The monk who broke the rule felt no suffering. The monk who followed it perfectly created hours of distress for himself. This reminds us that suffering often arises not from what we do, but from how we cling to our thoughts about it. Tonight, as your mind drifts toward old stories or unresolved moments, remember the wise monk. Practice setting down whatever no longer needs to be carried. Notice the lightness that comes from walking without yesterday's burdens. The Buddha reminded us that in the end, only three things matter: how fully we have lived, how deeply we have loved, and how gracefully we have learned to let go. True practice is not rigid perfection, but meeting what is present with care, then releasing it to make space for what comes next. As this journey gently completes, from the misty mountain monastery back to the quiet sanctuary of now, you carry within you the wisdom of release. What once arrived as teaching spoken in ancient halls has become living understanding, woven into awareness itself. The monk's guidance, lotus petals falling, the smooth wooden bead, none of these were ever separate from your own capacity for freedom. You have seen that letting go is not emptiness, but spaciousness, the ability to hold life gently. Like water flowing around stones, you can move through challenges without resistance. The breath releases to welcome the next inhalation. Seasons soften into one another. Night gives way to dawn. You are part of this same intelligent rhythm. When old habits of clinging arise, remember the monastery's quiet teaching. There is no need to force release. Simply soften your grip and trust what unfolds. Each moment offers another chance to practice this ancient art. In simple tasks, in difficult conversations, in silence and in breath, life itself becomes the teacher. Rest now in this understanding, as natural as your heartbeat. Release the day's tensions, tomorrow's imagined weight, and anything that no longer serves. You are held by the same wisdom that guides rivers and turns the stars. In letting go of everything, nothing essential is lost. What remains is the deep peace that has always been your true nature. Sleep well, and thank you for being here with Silent Monk.